I will admit off the top that I'm not the biggest Snoopy or Peanuts fan. I watched the 1972 Snoopy Come Home movie when I was a kid, and my cousins had the stuffed toys, but that's pretty much my entry and exit as far as this franchise was concerned. Until I stumbled across the Toonrific Tariq channel on YouTube, and I got a comprehensive history lesson on most of the cartoon specials. That spurred me on to watch the 2015 Peanuts movie, which I have to admit, as pretty as it looks,
she's pretty. She's not that pretty.
I initially bounced off it, but my next go at it caught me in the right mood to appreciate it and give it all the credit it deserves. I now consider it one of my favorite animated movies. I'll also just say that this is not the kind of video I particularly enjoy making, but there were so many parallels to some of the things I have been saying in my more critical videos that it was only right that I make this. For as much as we bash modern, tactless, and agenda-driven writers, and I use the term writers very loosely, who will invade a space and steamroll over characters that everyone loves, I think it's only responsible to highlight it when someone does it the right way. From the time my friend shared the trailer for Welcome Home Franklin with me, I just got a good vibe off it. With a lot of unfortunate recent practice, I've gotten very good at sniffing out disingenuous, divisive material from as early as the trailer, but there were no alarm bells ringing for me on this one. It just felt like a genuine Peanuts special centered around Franklin for a change, and I was excited to see what the story would be. The special is only 39 minutes including credits, so I don't want to dwell too much on the synopsis. I'd like to focus on a couple of key moments, then get to my point with this video, which is slightly outside of the special itself. The story is essentially Franklin's introduction to the neighborhood and basically the world of Peanuts, while paying homage to his comic strip origins, which was an excellent creative decision when shifting focus from the more established characters to one of the background characters. It's probably also important to mention that Lucy, Sally, Marcy, and even Peppermint Patty previously had specials of their own, so this is hardly unique. Those who read Marvel comics will probably appreciate this more because they will likely have read the Frontline comics. These took place during the Civil War event from the perspective of two regular reporters who are embedded in opposite camps of the superhero war. I always loved the idea of telling an interesting story with a different character that runs parallel to the main story but shows the same events from a different angle. Or better yet, GTA 4 and episodes from Liberty City, where you got to see the same story from the perspective of Nico, Louise, and Johnny. While this is not that exactly, it shows the world from Franklin's lens, as this specials tend to do when focused on different characters. I say all that to say that the characters were all written faithfully and their interactions with this new kid on the block were true to form. Franklin was a military brat who had a lot of confidence because he always made friends easily when he traveled to new places. It always weighed down on him when he had to leave friends behind, but he had no trouble making new ones wherever he went. That was until he arrived in this new home. All his tricks didn't seem to work in this new town because all these kids were vicious racists. I'm joking. No. He was making all these mistakes that fans of the property would be very familiar with, like his ignorance of Linus' obsession with the Great Pumpkin, or his lack of familiarity with Lucy's brash personality. It was fun to watch because it felt very participatory, like you know all these people already, so you wish you could be there to whisper in Franklin's ear not to make the mistakes he was making. As soon as he met Charlie Brown, I'm sure everyone watching breathed a sigh of relief because everyone knows Charlie Brown is a lovable loser. He may already belong there, but he's perpetually in the same position as Franklin because he's constantly looking for the win that would give him the recognition of his peers. And this became very relevant later in the special. Charlie was also the best person to orient Franklin to the neighborhood because Linus is his best friend and he knows Lucy all too well, so he could speak gently to the concerns that Franklin had from his interactions with them. And true to the goal of the special, they began to form a friendship as they agreed to enter a soapbox derby together because nobody else was interested in pairing with either one of them. Now, if a disruptive activist got their hands on this property, this scene would be a candidate for where everything falls apart. Franklin introduces Charlie Brown to his interests such as James Brown and John Coltrane music, and there was a really funny joke in there involving Charlie Brown's last name and Franklin's last name.
James Brown. You're not related, are you?
I don't believe so.
Maybe one day I could get to go up there, like Neil Armstrong.
Armstrong? Any relation?
Good one.
Then Franklin even gets into his favorite sport of baseball, where his great uncle played in the Negro Leagues. Charlie Brown understandably has no clue what that is, so Franklin explains to him that it was a time when black players could not play with white players, so they formed a league of their own. If Falcon and the Winter Soldier has taught us anything, this would be the perfect time for a grand and drawn-out lecture on race relations that would shift the mood completely. But instead, Charlie Brown learned something new, and the conversation flowed on naturally to other things. The conversation or anything similar did not come up again for the rest of the special, because it was only relevant to Franklin's relationship to baseball and his great uncle who inspired him. Now, I know what a very vocal section of the internet would say to this. That's not enough. We can't just gloss over it. We have to address past injustices in a way that is not so comfortable. But to them, I would say that that's not what Peanuts is, the same way that the Velma show is not what Scooby-Doo is. If that is your goal, you need to create your own vehicle to drive that message and let it stand on its own merits, because appropriateness seems to be a lost art these days. I'll break from the synopsis now and get into the reason why I decided to make this, and it's related to that specific conversation between Franklin and Charlie Brown. But I'll just add that Franklin went on to make mistakes in his friendship with Charlie Brown, but the story wrapped it up in a very Peanuts way. It was heartwarming, true to the lesson on friendship, and an excellent addition to their catalog of specials. While Charlie Brown is still my favorite because he's much closer to my personality, it was great being introduced to Franklin in this way as a more confident kid who had a very strong moral compass. So I decided to do a bit of digging after watching it, and I looked into one of the writers called Rob Armstrong.
Hi, I'm Rob Armstrong. I'm a cartoonist. I do a syndicated comic strip called Jumpstart, and I'm a screenwriter.
Because hearing about the Negro Leagues in a Peanuts cartoon was not something I ever expected to hear. Ardent Peanuts fans will probably know this, but the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the aftermath led to pressure on Charles Schulz to create the character of Franklin in 1968. He created Franklin very willingly, don't get me wrong, but the idea came from a lady called Harriet Glickman, who wished to push a message of unity to Peanuts' approximately 100 million weekly readers in the wake of Dr. King's tragic assassination. In a not-so-shocking twist, his publishers would not run the strip with Franklin on it, so Charles Schulz threatened to quit the strip altogether. The strip was eventually published, and thus Franklin was introduced to America. With that history and context of an attempt to exclude Franklin from the Peanuts comics in '68, it made sense to reference a time when sports was exclusionary as well, and in not so many words, show how much progress has been made since then. The initial connection between Charles Schulz and Rob Armstrong really piqued my interest, because it's something I've always talked about on this channel and in my life in general.
Strangely, I wasn't brought into that fold because of Franklin. I was just brought into the fold because Jumpstart appealed to Sparky Schulz. My connection to Sparky was very powerful because he supported what I was doing so early on. I didn't have fans or anything. It was puzzling to me. I'm meeting my hero and he's like, you know what I love about your comic strip? It's got great characters, and great characters, that's the whole thing. There are times when I'm sitting here without ideas or anything, I can hear him saying that. And he was like, no, your strip is great.
As the kids say, real recognize real. But when the 90s came, Schulz decided that it was time for Franklin to get a second name because he was the only Peanuts character with one name.
And one day he called me and said, I want to rename Franklin after you, Franklin Armstrong. I said, what? I said, why? Like, what? He said he has no last name, Rob. That's not right, is it? I was like, well, it's okay. He's Franklin, people love him. He said, no, it's not okay. Charlie Brown has a last name. Lucy Van Pelt has it. Come on. It's not right. So I said, okay. I said, I'm honored, but I was more than honored. I was also flustered.
And the way Rob addresses one of the biggest Franklin controversies from the internet was very classy and commendable from my perspective after research into what actually happened.
The question that has been with me and a lot of people for a while. Charlie Brown Thanksgiving, Franklin is sitting on one side of the table by himself in a beach chair when everybody else is sitting in other places. I understand you take a new swing at this. What should we expect?
Well, that scene was an accidental thing. No one meant harm by doing that years ago, but it caused harm. And people felt slighted, insulted. When the internet was invented, of course, that scene went viral. And that scene is where this whole project began. We all wanted to address it and finally deal directly with it. So it was very gratifying to write that scene and work backward from this moment to something that really touched people and got them to understand how human Franklin is and how much like Franklin we all are. We all want acceptance.
I'm not perfect, but we can get through the rough spots together, as friends.
Hey, Franklin! We saved you a seat over here. Come join us.
Ain't that what friendship's really all about?
Now, at the start of this, Rob Armstrong is not even a person I knew existed, but after looking into all the interviews and podcasts I could find, I think this is a guy who is doing it the right way. Just the way he speaks of his approach to the Franklin special told me everything I needed to know.
Franklin's story he wants to tell the world is the true meaning of friendship.
Wow.
To speak in terms of race in a way that's charming and funny and lovable. You know, Franklin is a lovable character. I wanted Franklin to, on his own volition, engage with the Peanuts characters as they currently exist in a way that audiences have never seen him do before. In other words, not function as an extraneous character.
Rob got inspired by the Peanuts strips way back when and decided to create his own characters that were representative of what he felt was lacking in the industry. A comic strip about a black nuclear family with a father who is a policeman and a mother who is a nurse, and you can just tell why it has endured for so long by the light-hearted and positive nature of the strips. He also did not just crap out content for content's sake. He created characters first who would not have stood the test of time if they weren't any good.
He's the first person who said, I'm a huge fan. It was weird, and I didn't believe it. I didn't take it literally. I thought he was just being nice, which is all I expected. I thought, man, if this guy's nice to me, this is going to be an unbelievable experience. But he wasn't just nice. He was truly putting Peanuts and Jumpstart together in the kind of lexicon of comic strips. And he was saying things I found hard to believe, like Peanuts and Jumpstart are a lot alike. They have great characters. And great characters, Rob. That's the whole thing.
That's it.
And I just felt I was flattered, but I was in a state of disbelief.
I say it all the time. Authenticity cannot be faked no matter how hard you try, and time is the ultimate judge of lasting quality. He did not jump on a popular property and mangle it to fit his worldview. He did not destroy an established franchise. He did not try to replace long-standing beloved characters with his creations, but instead built his own from the ground up and let it be judged by its own merits. If I sound overly impressed by Rob Armstrong, first and foremost, I love real artists and cartoonists in general, but passion is also infectious and I feel like everything he says comes from a genuine place. He was 6 years old when Franklin was created and 26 when his first comic book was syndicated, which blows my mind, and has been syndicated for 34 years now in 700 newspapers, which is a testament to his perceived good nature and immense talent. And when he got the chance to contribute to the legacy of Charles Schulz with this special, he honored the spirit with which Franklin was originally created, without breaking the consistency of what the Peanuts property is and does, which is something that most of us fans of the big superhero and fantasy properties can only dream of. I'm sorry, Miles, but this will only reinforce what I've been saying about you for years now. Storytellers, good and bad, have no excuse not to put in the work and create new. Unless they can't, in which case they don't belong in the industry to begin with. Get your grubby hands off other creators' established works and apply to balance spreadsheets out of a cubicle somewhere. You are adding nothing of value to the creative industry. I will end all my yapping here before it turns overly negative, but let me know your thoughts on Peanuts, Charles Schulz, Franklin, this special and everything in between, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.